Hi guys, thank you for joining in today's webinar. My name is Abdullah Mahmud. I'm really glad and excited to be here, and hopefully the objective is to have an interactive session at the end of the day and provide you with key insights on what Royal Cyber is doing, what Google Cloud has to offer in KSA region, and we believe we can provide you a great intel today. So let's start. As I told you, my name is Abdullah Mahmood. I am the speaker from Royal Cyber side. My designation and work revolves around being a practice lead at GCP on GCP Cloud side. I have an esteemed gentleman from Google side who is the master of Google Cloud Data and AI specialist. His name is Sabri Traifi, and he will be explaining most of the things on his behalf. So let's move towards the agenda. Initially, we will be giving you the insight of what we are, what we do as Royal Cyber, what is generative AI, its implications, the chatbot and AI agents that are being implemented in the organizations and in the environment, a brief overview of the POC that we created for you guys revolving around agents, and moving ahead, Mr. Sabri will be explaining the overview of Google Cloud Data Center, in KSA region, Google Generative AI capabilities and use cases, Vertex AI, agent space, its deployments and benefits, deployment with GPUs or APIs, information on LAM 7B on Google Cloud, and at the end of the day, we'll have a great Q&A session. So let's start from Royal Cyber. So Royal Cyber is the organization with an experience of 20 plus years and 2,000 plus employees globally. We have more than 500 certified consultants around the globe and 10 plus operational offices globally in 5 continents. And we have the sentiments of 600 plus clients across the globe. Moving ahead, let me showcase you our key prominent clients throughout KSA region. We have Sami, Fun City, Gulf Car, stuff like that. And our local presence in the KSA region is, and the Middle East part is Egypt, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Oman, Qatar, Bahrain, and Kuwait. Now, let us move towards RC's cloud integration expertise. We have experts from around the globe who can work on TensorFlow, Kubernetes, Google Kubernetes Engine, Salesforce, Zoho CRM, New Relic for monitoring, and Prometheus on monitoring and alert. For IAC services, we have the capabilities and extreme powerful hands on Terraform, Google Cloud Deployment Manager, Ansible. For DevOps, we have the experts regarding Jenkins, CI/CD pipeline, Azure DevOps, and Circus CI. Obviously, it's a lot to go through, but let me make you comfortable with that. We at RC provide cloud managed services, spanning around multi-cloud and hybrid cloud management, user support and training, cloud migration services, DevOps and automation, application management, infrastructure management, cloud security, backup and disaster recovery, performance monitoring, cost management and optimization, and compliance management. Same as the case, Royal Cyber provides cloud professional services revolving around cloud application deployment, cloud architecture design, security assessment, strategy consultancy, cloud FinOps, compliance and governance, disaster recovery planning, migration, and performance optimization. Though there are many pillars in which we provide, but most of the key pillars that Royal Cyber has the expertise and has a background on is migration, modernization, hybrid cloud, security, operations, FinOps, generative AI, and DevOps. So now let's move into Gen AI. First of all, I would like to thank you for joining today's session. Let's kick things off by talking about generative AI or Gen AI. Putting simply, generative AI is a type of artificial intelligence that doesn't just analyze data. It creates brands, new things. It learns patterns from existing data and then uses that knowledge to come up with a fresh content. For example, generative AI can create text like articles, emails, even poems, images for realistic photos to complete new design, audio like music tracks or even realistic voiceovers, video from scratch or by editing and enhancing existing footage. Codes, obviously, we are looking into that a lot of times as a coder, generates actual working program. So how does it do it all? At its core, Gen AI uses machine learning, especially neural networks trained on massive amount of data. One big part of this is sometimes called LLM, large language models, or LLM, which are trained on huge libraries of text to learn how humans communicate and create. All right. So where is generative AI actually being used? The short answer is almost everywhere. Some exciting real-world application includes content creation, drug discovery, which is actually helping scientists design new molecules much faster than before, customer service, powering the chatbots and virtual assistants to interact with the customer when they call for support, product design, assisting in creating prototypes or new designs, and software development, helping coders to write, fix, and optimize code with more efficiency. Okay, so let's zoom in on a few specific areas where generative AI is making a big impact. Content creation. Generative AI helps brands and creators by generating blog posts, marketing emails, social media, images, videos, and even music tailored for different audience. Customer services includes chatbots and virtual agents have gotten way much smarter with generative AI. They can answer complex questions, complete conversation based on who is the customer, and even prep conversation summarization for human agents, saving time. Software development, the developers are using it too. Autocomplete chunks of code, finding bugs a bit faster, saving time, and writing technical documentation without spending hours on it. Okay, so let's start by looking how generative AI is transforming design and product development. The key benefits across the industries are increased efficiency, enhanced creativity, generating new ideas and contents, personalizing tailored experience to individual users, improved decision making, providing data-driven insights, ethical concerns regarding issues related to bias, misinformation, and intellectual property, data privacy, ensuring the the responsible use of professional data, and accuracy and reliability, verifying the output of the AI model. Now, let us talk about the evolution of AI, starting with the earlier generation of AI system like traditional chatbots. These systems were called rule-based or limited AI. Then they typically worked on following predefined rules, decision trees, or were using basic NLP. They're great at handling simple, repetitive tasks, for example, answering frequent asked questions or guiding users through basic processes. But because they rely on scripted response and pre-programmed options, they struggle when the conversation got complex or moved beyond what they were trained for. If you ask them the question outside their script or the conversation get too much nuance, they often hit a dead end. But as you can see, this is not the case now. Let me give you a brief example of how it worked. So, limited contextual understanding. One big limitation of these rule-based systems is that they have a limited contextual understanding. They can easily get confused if the conversation doesn't follow a predictive path. And while they do well at providing basic customer support or retrieving specific piece of information, they simply aren't built for deeper or more dynamic conversation. This is where the next generation of AI, what we call advanced AI agents, started to make a big difference. Now, advanced AI and generative AI capabilities. With the rise of technology like large language models and generative AI agents today have a whole new level of capabilities. It's quite amazing right now. These agents just don't follow the script, they actually understand and generate natural language in a way that feels far more human. They can process complex information, understand nuances, and tackle more sophisticated tasks without needing every possible conversation path predefined. This shift has been absolutely transformational. Enhanced contextual understanding. One of the biggest improvements we see with advanced AI agents is enhanced contextual understanding. They can keep track of conversations, understand when something has changed, and even learn from the past interactions. This means they're able to handle complex queries, adapt to dynamic situations, and continuously improve their responses over the time. With autonomous actions, it doesn't stop there. AI agents can also take things to on a different level by providing solve complex problems without step-by-step guidance, make decisions based on real-time data and context, and execute multi-step tasks all on their own. This is a great advancement. And for a broader application, the advanced customer service is going to provide basic FAQs to truly professionalized support. Personalized assistance recommends solutions or products tailored to individual needs. And automatic workflows manages tasks across multiple systems without human interaction. I hope I'm keeping everybody excited because now is the main part that I would like to showcase you. We are moving to the POC part that was built by RC. And let me give you a pre-sample of what we actually did. It's then a small scenario, but it gives you an example of how agents and multi-agents are working. So let me give you an introduction of the architecture. So the concept was to create a master agent and the agents, subordinate agents for a specific kind of task. The master agent, as seen over here as a default agent, handle the question related queries from the user. It predefined their interaction and tried to accommodate accordingly. Now, as you can see on the lower part, you can see the information agent. The information agent was linked with the data store that had multiple inputs or documentation stored in it. Now, this agent was capable enough to provide the information asked by the user, and the information was fetched from the data store and provided to the user on a user interface, and it interacted in a humanized form. On the upper end, you can see the agent. This agent was handling the ticketing part in case of any HR oriented or IT oriented system error. This agent handled the process and even created the ticket using Cloud Function. So guys, let's move towards the demo part. Now, this might go a bit faster for you guys, but I hope my explanation of the architecture gave you a pre-sample of what's going to be happening in this demo. So let me share this. As you can see over here, I'm interacting with the default agent. And this is now, it has diverted me to the information agent where I'm asking how I can migrate my emails and contact to Google services. And once this is done, it will close the part. It will provide me the information. It will close the part and then move towards the ticketing agent part. Okay, so now it's closed. Moving towards the ticket logger. My apologies. This is the administration is still talking with the information agent. Now it's closed. Now, since I faced a particular set of error, I showcased that I'm facing some error in the HR system. Now I'm trying to explain what error it's getting, and it's asking for me the login and password credentials. Now, since I stopped it from resetting my password and asked it automatically asked me if I wanted to create a ticket. And since I said yes, it's asked me for my alias. And as you guys can see, this agent has provided me with the ticket ID as well. Okay, awesome. So now I would like to hand this over to Mr. Sabri, who is going to give you the latest updates from Google and Google in KSA region as well. Sabri, I'm going to hand this over to you. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. It's a pleasure being here. I'm waiting for the link to share my screen. Here it is. And let me know once you see my screen fully displayed. All good?
Yes, Sabri, we can see your screen. Thank you.
Perfect. So hi everyone. So I'm Sabri. I work as a data and AI specialist at Google Cloud, and I'm based in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And the idea today is to give you an overview of, first of all, Google Cloud in Saudi and the kind of generative AI capabilities that you can already leverage using our data center. Okay. But before even we jump to Google Cloud, let me try to move this deck. Not sure why my mouth is blocked. Okay, that's good. Before we move to Google Cloud, I was saying, you all know Google mostly from its user applications, right? And for the last 25 years, well, actually 27 years now, Google has been deploying, user applications that are deployed throughout the planet, and some of them have actually reached or surpassed 2 billion active users, which is a tremendous scale, right? And everything you see on Google Cloud is actually some sort of lessons learned from Google Cloud of how to scale infrastructure at that massive scale and make it available to all our end customers. Okay, and also in the area of machine learning and AI, for the last 25 years, Google has been at the forefront of innovation and breakthroughs. And of course, looking at the LLM kind of era, it all started in 2017 when the transformer architecture was actually invented by Google researchers, and that is leading us today to the amazing advancements we see in the generative AI landscape, with our latest model being Gemini, which I'm going to spend quite some time on today. Okay, and also, so Google Cloud, at Google Cloud, we have a planet scale coverage via our data centers. And of course, Dammam is one of the latest additions. Recently, we've added a few, one being in South Africa, for example. But now we have actually interconnected our network of data centers to the Middle East region via the Dammam data center, knowing that we also have a data center in Doha, Qatar. Okay. And so we have a so-called Class C data center. So Class C certification comes from the Saudi communication and satellite technology institution, or the governmental body that is responsible for allowing cloud providers to sell and implement their services in the kingdom. So we have received a Class C certification for the last year and a half from CST, right? So we are actually effectively deploying and having a lot of customers already connected on Google Cloud. This shows you a subset of, or a non-exhaustive list of public references that have allowed us to share that are currently on Google Cloud. That slide is probably 6 months old by now, so I'm sure that list keeps growing. But at least you can see some famous big names, Saudi and different customers that are already running their workloads on Google Cloud. But also in terms of generative AI, so last year we've seen quite a lot of implementations of AI, not just at the POC or proof of concept level, but also productionalizing some AI workload with those companies that you see here. So we see a lot of traction in Saudi Arabia around the AI field, and very importantly about the generative AI field. In Saudi, for information, we also have a center of excellence, which is based in KAFT, in which we give a lot of training initiatives that are open to whoever is willing to come physically to KAFT. It's at KAFT area in Riyadh. And we're also running a startup school for GenAI. This is the third iteration that actually started yesterday. So every year, or maybe twice a year even, we are running this startup school initiative. It's a 4-week program during which we go through the latest innovations and help different startups, but beyond startups, accelerate with Google Cloud technology. And the gentleman you see on the right side presenting something, that's actually me. So I don't have my webcam running, but then I'm the one actually giving that session last year in the second cohort of the program. Okay, moving on. You might have heard as well that last year there's been a strategic investment from Saudi's Public Investment Fund, PIF. They're going to launch a AI hub in Saudi Arabia using Google Cloud technology. So they'll have a dedicated data center that they will make available for the whole kingdom, and especially for public sector, but beyond public sector, it will also be available. So it's a massive investment that PIF and Google Cloud are working on in the kingdom today. And maybe a quick overview of these things here. So of course there is Forrester and Gartner who keep publishing every quarter some leader boards on where do you position the different competitors in the field of AI, right? So in the infrastructure, Google is at the forefront, and one of the reasons for this is because we have our own accelerators called TPUs, right? That have actually allowed us not to rely on solely third-party solutions like NVIDIA to be able to deploy our AI solutions. But not only in the infrastructure field, we are also a leader in the actual LLMs, or foundation models as we call them. So that Forrester report dates back to Q2 of last year, and indeed they put Google with Gemini mostly, right, as one of the top leader, actually the leader today in terms of AI capabilities, and I'm going to show you why that's the case. I have an issue with my mouse, sorry for this. So it's then not surprising that a lot of famous names and a lot of even unicorns in AI are actually relying on Google Cloud for their solutions. Anthropic, for example, solution run on Google Cloud effectively, and Cohere and so many of those, but all the big names in the planet today, and the vast majority of AI unicorns actually rely on Google Cloud for their own infrastructure. Okay, and companies, they do see a lot of ROI investment or value out of using Google Cloud generative AI solutions, And these are some of the numbers that customers have reported in terms of how much gains they see in terms of return of investment. We're going to see as well that Gemini, for example, costs almost nothing, but can bring a tremendous amount of value. And so on Google Cloud, we're trying to make AI accessible to everyone, right? So that's why we start with foundation models like Gemini, like where effectively you don't need to train anything. You don't even need to bring, data to train. You can straight away leverage APIs for different tasks. And I'll give you an easy example: translation, right? So if you have, let's say, customer care environment or a website or what have you, that, or a chatbot even, you don't want to, reinvent the wheel, right? So translation is done by AI today, right? And this is fully available as an API. So you don't need to, do any fine tuning of models for the sake of translation typically. We also allow customers to upload their own data and leverage what we call AutoML algorithms or solutions, so that without them having to write an ML model, they end up with a AI solution, right? And lately we've been investing a lot into the agents. So we're going to see in this presentation how the focus has shifted towards agentic systems, and we're going to see how that unfolds and how Google Cloud is tackling this aspect. If I jump into a high-level view of the data landscape on Google Cloud, there are 4 pillars maybe that you have to keep in mind, right? One of them is, of course, databases, production databases, typical PostgreSQL, Oracle, SQL Server, etc. That of course can be hosted on Google Cloud, like any type of infrastructure. Then we have our data analytic powerhouse, which is BigQuery today, which is a very unique serverless data warehouse on the market that's actually beyond a data warehouse today. We call it an AI lakehouse because you can plug BigQuery directly to talk to LLMs. Then we have the Vertex AI stack for all the AI services, and we're going to spend some time today on Vertex AI. And finally, we have the visualization layer called Looker, which is our BI kind of solution. Of course, on Google Cloud, you can also leverage Power BI, Tableau, and this kind of solutions. We do have our own as Looker. If you want a high-level view of the AI stack on Google Cloud, it looks like this, right? Starting from the bottom with the infrastructure, which means the GPUs and TPUs that are required typically to train or run Gen AI models, right? And then we have the Vertex AI kind of central component where we do have a model garden. I'm going to talk about this a lot today, where we host either Google models, open models, or partner models directly on Google Cloud. We have a lot of features around building your own models, either from prompt engineering, basic kind of activities, all the way to distilling models, to having them smaller in size, Jupyter notebooks, training models, MLOps pipelines. All of these services are embedded in Vertex AI. And the focus lately, as I said, is around building agents that can interact with each other to go beyond just the Q&A kind of generative AI setup and allow you to actually leverage AI to take action on your behalf, right? And recently we launched Agent Space. We're going to talk about Agent Space today as well. Agent Space is somehow Google search into your enterprise data. So as an employee in a company, you have, it's as if you had a Google search bar where you're actually tapping into your work data as opposed to the public internet as we do today with Google search. Okay. And maybe on this slide here, what we're trying to mention here is that, of course, on Google Cloud, we cover the whole landscape from storing your data to using our compute solutions, what we call the AI hypercomputer. You can use Google Cloud TPUs or actually NVIDIA GPUs or actually CPUs for some models that could run on CPUs, right? We are open to all frameworks. Of course, Google Cloud invented TensorFlow. However, we have a lot of models running on PyTorch and JAX and all these different Ray and all these different frameworks that are fully supported and available on Google Cloud. We're going to talk a lot about the models today that are supported. Basically support all the open model that exist on the planet today. And then, as I said, the focus in the last few months is actually around agent solutions. And there was quite a lot of announcements made at Next in April, 2 weeks back, right? So I'm going to summarize those as part of this session. Now, but before I even move on, so I'm sure you've heard about Gemini. I mean, today Gemini has a public offering, so you can have Gemini on your phone, on Android phones, right? And Gemini is very unique as a model because from the ground up, it's been built as a multimodal LLM. By multimodal, we mean not only a text LLM, but an LLM or a model that is capable of understanding text, images, audios, videos, PDF files, any kind of sort of unstructured data, right? Beyond just the text that we used to somehow. Up to recently, that was the largest model in terms of context window. So when you invoke an LLM, you're going to provide some text to it, and that's called a context, right? So there is a context window. So Google, the production Gemini solutions allow up to 2 million tokens as an input to Gemini, which is a huge amount of data, right? Maybe thousands of pages or videos or audio that you can give as an input to Gemini, and for example, let it search inside these documents or summarize these documents. On the R&D lab, they have tested Gemini up to 10 million tokens. So that means you can input a huge amount of data to your LLM without having to fine-tune it or implement a complex RAG architecture. We're going to talk about RAG today, Retrieval-Augmented Generation. But effectively, if your LLM is capable of swallowing a huge amount of data and working on it directly, then it's probably faster and easier and cheaper for you to do so. And Gemini is very much capable of this. And of course, you can also fine-tune and customize Gemini. For example, if you had a very unique language that is very less spoken, that Gemini doesn't know about, you could actually fine-tune Gemini to support that new language. Okay, so there's a lot of features that Gemini support. So the latest release of Gemini we've released is Gemini 2.5 Pro, which is valued as one of the most quote-unquote intelligent model today. Of course, the focus today in the last few weeks and months is around models that are capable of thinking or taking a task and reasoning around it to produce maybe a report, a detailed analysis, etc. So this is what we introduced with Gemini 2.5. I know that DeepSeek has been very popularized, in particular for these kind of tasks, and we are very much capable of doing this. We're actually providing better performance using Gemini. Okay. So Gemini 2.5 is in preview today, although it's available. However, we have Gemini 2, which is generally available. As we discussed, it supports a huge context window, up to 2 hours video, for example, you could give with 1 frame per second, to be very precise. So it's a huge amount of, like you can give a YouTube video to Gemini and ask it to summarize the video or find some specific scene inside the video. So which is kind of unmatched. I mean, up to recently, that was extremely difficult to search inside videos. So today, Gemini allows you to do this very, very easily. And as I mentioned before, so Gemini is multimodal from the ground up, right? It covers a lot of modalities. So it does text-to-speech, speech-to-text, translation, OCR, understanding of images and videos, as we were saying. You can also input a live video to Gemini. So technically, with the live API of Gemini, you can stream a live video to Gemini and let it analyze it and ask questions, and it will reply to you. But one of the use cases you can think of is, for example, if you have a camera that is put somewhere on the street or on a building, and it has a live stream of video, and you want to maybe detect strange behaviors, a fire, someone crossing a red light, or these kind of incidents, you can easily tell Gemini, alert me whenever this happens, right? Which is pretty amazing, right? That you get actually some AI that is watching quote unquote, a video, analyzing it, understanding what's going on, and alerting you whenever a certain condition occurs, right? So this we can do today with Gemini already. There is quite some demos available that you can try. You can actually share your screen or use your webcam on your laptop and show things to Gemini. What am I holding in my hand and stuff like this? You're going to be surprised how capable it is today. Some other unique features of Gemini are around the concept of grounding. When you know that LLMs, they tend to hallucinate oftentimes, and the problem is they don't really know they hallucinate. So they will give you a wrong answer, believing it's a correct answer, right? And in Google Cloud, what we're allowing with Gemini is to ground the data with Google Search, with Google Maps, actually even with your own data or with third-party data, right? So the whole idea is that whenever you get an answer from an LLM, you want to be sure that it is not invented somehow, but it is coming from some sort of a ground truth that has been used. And in the interactions with Gemini, you can request that the sources that have been used are shared with you, right? Especially when you're doing grounding on your data. So let's say you have a specific policy in your company, you're providing that policy to Gemini, you ask a question, it's going to say, yes, for the specific question you ask, this is the answer. This is where I found this answer. And you get the link to the answer. You can go and check yourself. So that's called grounding, and that's extremely important because we know the tendency of hallucinations from the different LLMs in the market today. And then, so when you ground on your data, we use what is called, Retrieval-Augmented Generation, RAG. It's a very famous pattern today. And we have different level of abstraction for the solution. You have out of the box, known as Vertex AI Search, which is a fully managed solution where you give your data, your website, your PDFs, what have you, and we handle the RAG ourselves at Google. So it's a managed service, basically. We have a RAG engine that you can use with different APIs, and you can actually build and customize your own RAG solution, chunking your data and creating the vector embeddings and doing the search. All of this can be customized if you so wish. But of course, we always recommend customers to rely on managed components whenever they can, right? Or whenever they get sufficient performance. I was saying as well that a lot of the focus today is around AI agents, right? And their ability to, beyond just a query and answer setup, like Abdullah was showing before, you want to have some sort of a master agent or an agent brain that is capable of understanding where to redirect a specific query, right? So this is the focus of a lot of AI directions today, is around, okay, beyond just a Q&A kind of generative AI solution, how do I get the solution to think by itself, what is the next step I should take? Is there a tool or an agent that I can invoke? For example, maybe I can go and search for the answer in a database, and then I'm going to create some SQL code. The tool is creating some SQL code, getting you the answer and replying to you, right? So a lot of focus in all the Gen AI providers today is around this topic. And on Google Cloud, we are leveraging what we call agent tools, right? With the ability to either plug your Gen AI solutions via custom APIs, and this is the APG kind of logo. That is our API management kind of solution that you can leverage to interact with specific APIs on custom tools. This is one option. You can also rely on pre-built connectors, Salesforce data, SAP data. So you ask a question and the data is in a Salesforce system. You can go and get it from there. And also different toolbox for different databases or PostgreSQL and different databases. We do a lot of NL to SQL, natural language to SQL, that you can actually ask questions on data that is in the database and let AI figure it out for you, create the SQL code, get the answer, and formulate it to you in a English readable way or Arabic readable way, right? So you might have heard about Google Agent Space. So Google Agent Space has been released very recently. The idea of Google Agent Space is that you want to have the Google search bar that is capable of interacting with your enterprise tools. And this is connected to the fact that our data today as employees in our companies is spread into very different tools. So oftentimes, even myself, I always think, I've seen that somewhere, but I don't recall where exactly. Was it in Salesforce? Was it in my email? Was it somewhere in a Drive document that I forget about? So the whole idea is, how do I accelerate my productivity by being able to search into my enterprise solutions the same way I search today on Google search? That's what Agent Space is all about, right? The ability for you to not only search into your enterprise applications, but also take some actions. For example, create a calendar for me with XYZ persons and send them an invite. And it will do this for you and say, okay, just press the send button, right? So the whole idea is, how do I increase employees' productivity through this kind of tools? And obviously, because it's powered by Gemini at the end, right? It's capable of reasoning through your data, searching multiple sources. You may, want to summarize some topic that is found in very scattered documents. So Gemini is capable. I mean, Agent Space using Gemini is capable of doing this automatically for you. And so there are three pillars that Agent Space relies on. One of them is finding the data that you need. So it's able to search through documents, images, and even videos, as we mentioned before, because Gemini is capable of doing so. Then, while understanding this complex information you have and maybe make it easily accessible, and then allowing you to act on this, taking actions on your behalf. For example, creating a support case, right? Or closing a support case automatically, right? And then, of course, this requires integration with a lot of enterprise applications. You can see a subset of those we are working on today, and we keep adding new ones. Slack, for example, is there, right? So oftentimes, many companies, there's a lot of intelligence of data stored inside Slack, where employees discuss, right? And searching Slack might not be easy, and it might be in Slack, it might be in Dropbox, it might be elsewhere. So the idea is that Agent Space allows you to, in one place, be able to search this data, find it, understand it, and then act upon it, right? So that's a summary about Agent Space. And as part of Agent Space, we have an offering called Notebook LM. I don't know if you've used Notebook LM. If not, I strongly encourage all of you to have a look into Notebook LM. And I'm using Notebook LM on a daily basis myself. So let's say you have a long document or a series of documents or a different website, and you want to, study those. Notebook LM allows you to upload all of this data, or those websites, or those YouTube videos, and then it's as if you had an assistant allowing you to answer any question on the data that you given it. Right? So let's say you receive a 3,000-page RFP. You can go take the best tea or coffee that you like and start reading those 3,000 pages, or even 50 pages, by the way, and read and make sure you have your abilities to take some notes, or you just give this file to Notebook LM and just upload the file. In within a few seconds, maybe minutes, but usually seconds, you can actually ask any question like, what is this RFP about? Even if it's in a language that is not English, by the way. So let's say you have an Arabic RFP of 100 pages. You just say, tell me, what is the scope of work? Summarize it for me. Is there any sizing information? This kind of things, right? You can do this very effectively using Notebook LM. It has become the preferred tool for students today, to be very honest with you. Of course, it's an amazing tool to accelerate your research. Not only so, you can actually take any sources of information and generate a podcast that you listen to. So if you don't want to read those 3,000 pages of an RFP, you can actually ask Notebook LM to create a podcast for you, and you just listen to two people interacting about the content of this RFP. So you're driving, let's say, and you're actually working, you're listening to an RFP. You can actually go even beyond this. You can actually interrupt the podcast conversation and ask questions. So really, I encourage all of you to look into Notebook LM. This is the future of working with data, clearly. On top of those, so we talked about, let me go back. Sorry, my mouse has an issue for sure. Yes, maybe here. Yes. So we talked about Notebook LM, right? Which I really encourage. There is a public version of Notebook LM that you can use. But what I want to show you is also extra capabilities we have around, if my mouse allows me, it doesn't. Yes, here. There is also a lot of focus today around when we say generative AI, we generate text mostly, right? A chatbot generates text, but can we generate videos? Can we generate audios, right? Can you generate images, right? And a lot of tools do this today. So we have Veo 2, which is the latest video generation model from our DeepMind research arm at Google, right? That is available today and publicly generally available. You can get, let's say, in the first area here, you see the first frame and the last frame of a kind of manga, whatever that is, anime scene, right? And you just generate and interpolate a video that is going from that image to that image. Or you can see in the bottom here, you have this, I don't know, James Bond or whoever that is, Mission Impossible kind of stuff where you will remove the harness automatically using AI, right? So you have the impression that this guy is actually flying, right? A lot of in-painting capabilities that are there. So Veo 2 is there. Feel free to try. It's very fun. And it's actually used by, marketing agencies when they want to create their ads quickly. They can actually leverage this kind of tools. And on top of Veo, we also have Imagine, which is our image generation tool, which creates very realistic images, and you can actually in-paint things, you can remove things from a picture, etc. Also very fun to use, mostly used in the creativity kind of landscape or industries. I'm not going to go through this video, but I encourage you to look into this Project Astra, which is an AI assistant leveraging Gemini Live API, where you actually use the camera of your phone to ask Gemini questions about what's happening in the environment where you are in. So it's called Project Astra. It's the latest from Google Research, or it's called DeepMind, right? Our research arm. Very futuristic kind of setup, and that is definitely coming because, as we saw before, the Gemini Live API is already available today. You can actually already develop something on Gemini Live. Now, zooming back onto the Google Vertex AI stack, right? So we mentioned the agent space, right? Spent quite some time on this. I want to focus on the Vertex AI middle component here, which has three major building blocks. One of them is the model garden, where we have all the LLMs. And I have only one slide, but hopefully summarizing, actually a few slides, but mostly this one summarizing what is Google offering. So first of all, we're obviously offering Google Cloud models. Gemini, Imagen, Veo, Lyria being our music generation model that we just released at Next, right? So those are Google models available as an API, okay? But a lot of customers, especially in Saudi, they don't want to use kind of global solutions, but they want to rely on open LLMs that they deploy on GPUs, right? So in Google, in Saudi, in the MAM, you can deploy basically all open models on Google Cloud in the MAM. From Meta, the Llama model, family of models, including Llama 4, the Mistral AI solutions as well. Interestingly, Sdaya, Alam, I'm going to talk about this today, DeepSeek, Gemma, so all the open models, basically, it's a simple rule. Anything you have available in Hugging Face can be deployed on Google Cloud, okay? I also wanted to mention that last month, Sdaya, they've actually released an open version of their Arabic tuned model called Alam. So they've released the 7B model on Hugging Face. which means they've made it an open model where you can download the weights and actually run it on GPUs. Okay. So since that day, you can actually, in a few clicks on Google Cloud, in the MAM, deploy that model, either on Vertex AI or directly on a Google Kubernetes engine. I'm not entering into these different flavors, but at the end of the day, any model that is available on Hugging Face, you can deploy by the click of a button on Google Cloud. And that is really a unique differentiator compared to doing things on-prem, right? Another, and I'm going to explain to you this in a few slides, why I'm saying this. Another option is to use model as a service. So some companies, they say, I don't want to use Gemini, I want to use Llama, but I don't want to host Llama on GPUs myself. Can you give me an API that I can talk to Llama 4, for example, and then I'm going to pay for tokens? It's also available. Now, keeping in mind, however, that those models are not hosted in Saudi Arabia. Okay. So let's say you want to use Claude, you want to use Llama 4 as a hosted model, then it's sitting somewhere in the US, and all you pay for is the tokens that you use. My neighboring dog is noisy, so let me close. Sorry for that. So keep in mind we have that option as well. So basically we have three options, right? One of them is I'm using APIs, Gemini, probably the cheapest and the most performant one. Second option is I deploy my own model on GPUs. I control the whole thing, but I'm paying for the GPUs. We're going to see some prices. And the third option is that one where I'm using an open model, but it is hosted by Google. All I do is interfacing with it. And as I said, this is not hosted inside as of today. Might come, but for now, it's not really in the roadmap as far as I know. So we saw Model Garden, so the possibility of using all types of model on Google Cloud in the map. We have also a model builder where you can effectively, let me go to the right slide here. Yes, you can actually train your own models, LLM models, or even non-LLM models. I mean, it's not generative AI models. So all the toolkits are available for you to train whatever models you want. For one example is in Qatar, we have worked with a governmental agency, right, to launch Al-Fanar, which is an Arabic LLM, which is running and Google Cloud, and they have, of course, trained it on Google Cloud. Right? You can also just tune a model, working on the prompt design, doing some supervised tuning, distilling the model to have it running on less GPUs, right, or less RAM, basically. And there's also a lot of tools around evaluation, because as we're going to see, one of the key requirements when you deploy a Gen AI solution is the ability that you should have to evaluate your solution. How good is it, right? You cannot put into production something that you've not evaluated. So how do you choose which model you use or which setup you use is based on an evaluation. So we do have a lot of tools that can help you evaluate the models. Okay, and that's a very important aspect. And the last one is the agent builder, where, as we mentioned, beyond just Q&A sort of with LLMs, you want to be able to have agents that can reason, take actions, invoke different tools on your behalf. One of the famous ones, for example, is you can have an LLM that you ask a scientific question to the LLM, and maybe it's going to say, hey, okay, well, in order for me to answer this, I can run some Python code to implement that logic. The Python code required is this. It creates the Python code. They say, okay, well, let me run this Python code in a sandbox environment, get the result, and feed it back to the user. Today, you can do this very easily on using Gemini and the agent toolkit that we have. So we're capable of going that far, right? Next, 2 weeks ago, there have been a lot of focus around the possibility to develop agents that can actually interact with each other. So we've released quite a few things at Next around this. One of them is an open source agent development kit, right, to help you develop your own agents. We've deployed an agent engine. We've actually provided an agent engine where you can actually deploy on a runtime, a managed runtime, your agents. So you don't worry about what are how the resources. It's a managed environment for running your agents. And we're also open sourcing an agent garden, just like the model garden we have, where, for example, we mentioned before, let's say you have an agent that talks to Salesforce, right? So your master LLM, maybe Gemini, can invoke that agent to retrieve some data for you, right? So we have a lot of partners who are open sourcing agents that will be available in agent gardens. We have a few already, and this keeps growing, obviously. During Next, we also introduced a new protocol called A2A, agent to agent, which allows different application and agents to interact with each other as opposed to systematically going back to the master agent, right? So this is there as well. So there's a lot of focus, not only from Google, from everyone in this industry today, on how to make those agents as self-contained and collaborative as possible.
So Sabri, I believe we have some questions. I've shared it with you on the workspace, but I also got one question in regarding somebody asked, Mr. Irfan asked, what's the master agent doing? So just to answer that question, the master agent is working as a middle guy who is trying to direct our queries. It's kind of a receptionist that's greeting you, asking for your concern and directing you to the other agents in respect of if it's a HR oriented or it's an information related oriented question. So it's going to direct you to the information agent. And if it's a IT tech related issue, it's going to divert you to the ticketing agent. Okay, so I believe I answered the question. Then there is one more question from a gentleman. They asked, what are the key consideration for building a Gen AI roadmap? So for an enterprise scale, I believe, and Sabri can add on to it, the business alignment and value realization should be there in order to align AI capabilities with industrial trends and pain points. Also, the data strategy and infrastructure readiness should be there. So there should be a scalable data, and primarily we recommend cloud native, containerized and cost optimized solutions for ML related workloads. Okay. Sabri, are you able to see the questions that I shared you on the workspace?
Actually, I didn't see, but Abdullah, allow me to finish the presentation. I think we're almost done,
sure.
And then we can go.
Sure. Go ahead.
It'll be easier for me. Okay, thank you. So I wanted to have a few slides around Retrieval-Augmented Generation, which is still a pattern that we see a lot. So I mentioned before that a tool like Gemini is capable of handling a huge amount of context data, which actually you can even cache. So, however, if you're going to use an open model, you're going to have a limited context window, and maybe you want a fast answer. So it's probably reasonable to leverage a RAG infrastructure. So which involves quite a few things, right? You need to, if you have PDF documents, you need to chunk them, store them in a vector database, embed the content, right? Create embeddings through an embedding model, store them. Then you create some sort of an index to search those data. Then whenever you have a question, before you submit the question to the LLM, you go to your vector database, you retrieve, you embed the question, you figure out what are the closest chunks from my knowledge base to this question that is being asked, and let me feed the LLM together with not only the question, but also the top 5, 10, whatever chunks from my vector database, which supposedly embed the enterprise knowledge, right? So this is a pattern that we see a lot. It's pretty evolved. It's not so straightforward. We mentioned that on Google Cloud, we offer a managed service for this, or we allow you to basically do it fully yourself. A lot of customers use tools like LangChain for this kind of tools, and that's perfectly feasible and doable as well. And the way it works usually is that this is an important pattern to understand, that you always start with encoding your knowledge, right? So you take all your knowledge base, be it text, images, audios, whatever, and you create embeddings using embeddings model. Embeddings model can be either from Google, let's say, or someone else as a private model, or an open model as well that you can deploy on GPUs. You create vector embeddings, so which at the end becomes a vector space, vector search space, where you're able to, all the chunks that are close to each other reside close to each other in the vector space where they're located, right? Well, typically you'd have like 768 values in the vector, up to 4,000 effectively based on the size of your data. So you can imagine a vector space. Most of us, I'm sure, have done some sort of math where you can imagine what is a vector space, and you're trying to locate the closest vectors to each other in space, right? So that's exactly what that does, right? And then and this is used a lot, for example, for recommendation. So let's say you open Amazon website, right, and you want to buy a T-shirt, Olympics T-shirt, as it shows here. And oftentimes you're always going to see similar to this item, and it's going to show you 5, 6 items or whatever, right? Where is this coming from? It's actually doing a vector search, right? It's actually embedding the one you search for, the one you clicked, into a vector space, searching what are the closest vector images to this one, and then showing you what are the images that are closest to that shirt window. So in the recommendations, this is very, very much used as well. So it's not only for RAG, it can be used also for recommendation in e-commerce websites, typically, right? That's an important pattern that is very, very much used today. And I was mentioning before that, there is a complexity when you deploy an LLM on GPUs. And we've been talking to a lot of customers at Google Cloud, not just here in the Middle East and Saudi, but throughout the planet. And people, they tend to think or have this perception that all I need is going to be GPU, maybe a PyTorch if I'm deploying Llama, and I deploy my Llama software, and that's it. So just like if I were deploying, Windows software on my machine, right? It's actually much more involved than this. I mean, there is a lot of complexity around how you actually deploy a model on GPUs. First of all, what GPUs are you going to use? What size of GPU do you need? Are you using a single GPU or or single GPU, a single node with multiple GPUs, or multiple nodes with multiple GPUs? And that's very different. How do you actually acquire those GPUs? Are they there for you to consume all the time and you're paying even if you're not using them? Or you have some sort of a spot mechanism where I pay less, but I have access for cheaper resources? And then if I need to tune my model, what training libraries do I leverage? And how do I need to distill my model? Is my model too big? Do I need to distill it? If so, how do I do that? And then more importantly, what is the serving mechanism that I use? VLLM, TGI, right? And when we say Llama, okay, what Llama model are you talking about? The 8B, the 7B, the 405 billion parameters? Because all of these models, they have different performances, different latencies, and different requirements in terms of GPUs, right? What is the precision of the parameters I use? Are we talking about 4 bits or 2 bytes or 4 bytes, which is very different? And then the GPU RAM keeps growing exponentially. So there's actually a lot of engineering associated with deploying your own models on GPUs. So on Google Cloud, we have Vertex AI Model Garden and the ability to, in one click, abstract away all you see here on the right side. But I speak to a lot of companies here and in Saudi, and they are trying to do this on-prem. It's a very complex exercise to do. So either you are really inventing AI, then yes, maybe you need to learn all of this, or you just want to use AI for your business. You certainly should not waste your time. I mean, it's a very good exercise for your brain to learn these things. But at the end of the day, there's not much business value in fighting with all these technologies if all you need is a chatbot, right? So it's important to keep that in mind, that, hey, there is a technical cost and the price as well. We're going to see prices of deploying yourself your models on GPUs. But it's fully possible, and in Saudi, we see it a lot. I wanted also to give you that comparison of, okay, we talked about Gemini and we talked about GPUs and deploying models on GPUs. I'm trying to show you here the price difference. So let's say you use Gemini 2.0 Flash with text. Let's stick with text for now. In terms of price, it's very easy to understand. Every input token, a token being a syllable, maybe 3 characters, right? Every input token, every million input token is going to cost you 15 cents of dollar. Okay. And similarly, output tokens, text tokens, cost you 0.6 per million, right? Which means it's very cheap, to be honest, unless you're using the live API, where, for example, I have a stream of video coming non-stop to Gemini that I never stop. You can see here the price. It says Gemini 2.0 Flash Live API. For 1 million video tokens in input, I'm paying $3. So you can, of course, you can then estimate how many tokens is a second, and then you get to see how much it's costing you. But for text, you can see it's extremely cheap, right? We've rarely seen customers spending more than $100 per month on Gemini if they're only doing text, unless they would feed a huge amount of data all the time, which means it's not a chatbot. It's a kind of, I give you a lot of input and I want you to analyze it, then yes, then you can be leveraging a lot of tokens. But technically, the API is the easiest and cheapest way of using generative AI solution. It happens to be a way stronger model than almost anything you can do on GPUs today, unless maybe Llama 4. As you can see, Llama 4 is also a huge model. I don't know if you were following it, I think last week or something, they released Llama 4 or 2 weeks back. It's a huge model as well. But a 70 billion model today is not the same capability of Gemini or ChatGPT, of these kind of models, who are trained on, we don't know how many trillions of parameters, right? They are exhibiting thousands of billions of parameters, as opposed to a 7B model, right? So you cannot expect the same performance or accuracy with smaller models than bigger models, right? So my advice is, whenever you can leverage an API, you should do so. Unless you're really building your own AI yourself, and then yes, then you can go ahead and fine-tune a model and stuff like this, right? But this is much more involved somehow. And you can see on the right side here, the prices in the month for GPUs. So those machines called the G2 machine, they're hosting NVIDIA L4 GPU. The L4 GPU is a GPU with 24 gigabytes of RAM. And for example, we mentioned Alam 7B. The Alam 7B model can run on one L4 GPU, right? But because you're deploying this on a GPU, right, you're going to pay for the GPU hardware, or the node where the GPU run. So this, you can see the prices here, right? So the biggest one here is the G2 standard 96. It has 8 GPUs inside the node. It has some hardware configuration, right? It has CPUs and memory as well, of course, as a node, right? And if you use it on demand, it's going to cost you $12.8 per hour. Unless you commit for 1 year, then yes, it goes to $8 an hour. That's still significant money. Or 5.76 per hour if you commit for 3 years. So for 3 years, you commit on a certain duration that you're going to use. That means you're going to pay for 3 years, regardless of whether you use it or not, right? So there is a huge price difference between using APIs and GPUs. Of course, and maybe to mention this here, Gemini ML processing today is not in Saudi. It is coming to Saudi. We're working hard on bringing it. So it's going to come to Saudi in the coming quarter, maybe this quarter or next quarter. Then I don't see why companies would keep using GPUs unless they want to. And actually, we're very happy selling GPUs, right? But I don't think it's really worth it today if Gemini is here available. And there's another point I want to drive your attention to, and maybe it's in the same, maybe answering the question around the Gen AI roadmap that was asked. Right, that's a very valid question. What roadmap should have for generative AI? And one of the very important aspects is that, first of all, you should not rely on one LLM, because the LLMs, they keep changing, right? So effectively, today we have Llama released Llama 4, then DeepSeek come and say we have a better model, then Mistral come and say, hey, my model is actually better, then Gemini 2.5 comes, then Gemini 3 is going to come, then ChatGPT is going to come and say, hey, my model is actually so models, they keep changing. So investing in models doesn't make sense because models, they keep changing all the time. But and the LLM is only one part of the equation. And that's what I want to show you here. That the LLM is just your Q&A kind of brain of your solution. However, there's a lot of things you need to think about. Do I need to tune my model? We discussed grounding, right? Do I need to ground my answers? Do I need to figure out where is this answer coming from effectively? Well, an LLM is as good as the prompt engineering you've done. What is the prompt that I should feed my LLM so that it answers accurately to what is required and that it ignores the questions that it should not be answering? Then there is all this idea around the chain of thought or react pattern that is used so that LLMs, they tend to be better if you ask them to provide a detailed answer step by step of how they came up to the results. So there's a lot of work to be done in prompt engineering around this aspect, right? And then, okay, well, your LLM in itself needs to be integrated into maybe an API or a website or an application, right? Probably needs to talk to some data. Maybe you have a RAG setup, or how do I connect it to the data? We discussed master agent versus other agents, well, which means there is a routing logic in the conversation. How do I handle this? Now, more importantly, maybe you have some sort of memory that your chatbot should have. Like you cannot ask a question, you get an answer, then he forgot the answer. Very oftentimes, you need to keep the context of the conversation for every conversation, which means effectively you keep feeding to the LLM all the previous questions and answers and the new question, right? So this logic of handling the conversation state and the history, what we call the memory of the LLM, is a very important aspect. How do you implement this? By default, LLMs, they don't implement this, right? And beyond that, you need to think about what is the UI for my solution. Do I need to handle voice? The latest customer I spoke to said, I want my chatbot to be enabled in Arabic and English voice and Hindi voice, and also chat with text. How do I handle the scaling and the concurrency? Of course, being a piece of software is going to have errors, and how do you handle this? You need to do logging. Again, it's a piece of software. CI/CD must be implemented just like you do any other software. And then you probably need some analytics. How many people are using my chatbot solution? How much, or GenAI solution? What is the most frequently asked questions? What is the average response time we give? How many customers are happy with what we answer them? All this analytics you need to think about. We need to store those conversations, or maybe the sentiment, right? Which means also, as I mentioned, that the evaluation is key, because once I've done all of these different tasks, right, I need to make sure my solution is trustworthy. It's not as hallucinating, right? So the evaluation is actually you should spend a lot of time on the evaluation. That's why it's interesting when I speak to customers here that their focus is, give me GPUs. Well, I can give you GPUs, that's fine. They're going to be expensive, that's fine, but use them. But at the end of the day, you have to do all these things, right? I mean, it's not, the GPU in itself is just like I give you a laptop that doesn't even have an operating system, and okay, do your work. Well, that's not enough. You're going to need applications, logics, etc. It's the exact same. A GPU is a piece of hardware at the end of the day. It's like a plus CPU, right? But it doesn't do anything in itself. But even if I put Llama on top of it, again, all it can do is answer one specific question. That's it, correctly or not. Then, okay, how do I actually build my application? How do I ground it to my data, right? So it's important to think about this. I mean, and back to the question about around the roadmap, it's not just the choice of an LLM. Like, okay, I choose ChatGPT. It can be if all you do is asking trivial questions on public data. Okay, yeah, we can use Gemini or ChatGPT if all you ask about is, what is the weather in Riyadh today? Because of course, Gemini can talk to Google search and give you the answer, but then just go to Google search. Or who was the king of Saudi 20 years ago? Okay, yes, you can ask this in LLM, most likely you'll get a correct answer. But in reality, okay, this is for us when we, as users, when we play with the LLM or try to trick it. But that's not, there's no business value in asking this kind of questions to an LLM today, right? You actually want the LLM to leverage your data to help you improve your business, right? And that's why LLMs, with the knowledge they have today, is only knowledge of the world, historical, geographical, whatever. But that's not going to help much in our business lives today, right? So you need to think about all of this when you think about your roadmap for generative AI, right? And I wanted to close maybe this presentation with a couple of things. One of them is on Google Cloud, we understand that it is not easy to deploy your first GenAI application. So our engineering team, they've worked on what they call a GenAI Agent Starter Pack. If you search for this, Google Cloud GenAI Agent Starter Pack, architecture, it's a GitHub kind of repository that embeds all of these kind of requirements. Like you see the user is there, then it has a front end, which is an app running on Cloud Run with an API server on Fast API, where LLM orchestration is done by LangChain. And then you have the evaluation service that I mentioned is very important. Which LLM do I need, etc., etc., etc. So there's a lot of boxes that needs to be ticked, and we're trying to make it as easy as possible for our customers to deploy their generative apps. So we have put this GitHub open source kind of starter pack that I encourage all of you to look at. And one last thing I wanted to mention is that we're running GenAI Live and Labs in Riyadh 2 weeks from now in Riyadh, and actually on the 21st of May as well in Jeddah. So if you want to know more about these technologies that I presented today, feel free to register to this event. And in Riyadh and or in Jeddah, there's one in Jeddah as well, as I said, and we'll be very happy to meet you in person and discuss maybe more in details how can you use these technologies for your business. Abdullah, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Sabri. A wonderful and insightful session given by Mr. Sabri. So, guys, so let me close this session with an introduction to myself. Once again, I am Abdullah Mahmud, the practice lead. Our global head is Abdullah Hasib, and for digital transformation, it's Imran Tahir, and digital transformation advisor, it's Sunny Dogar. Guys, you are welcome to reach out to us on the mentioned below emails regarding any particular queries that you would like to discuss and you like to showcase. So Sabri, I shared a set of questions with you over the workspace. I believe people are excited to ask you certain things, and it would be great if they can get this information directly from you. Are you able to see these questions?
Where are they?
On the workspace.
You send them to me by Google Chat or
Google Workspace. Yeah, Google Workspace.
Okay,
the one
so I have
we
one here.
shared.
Yeah,
Okay.
so let me read the question I have here. So how does GCP handle model fine-tuning and custom training for industry-specific use cases? Well, we effectively have a service that helps you in fine-tuning. So all we require is the data itself, usually in the form of question and answers. That's usually how it works, that you have to prepare as a JSON line file, and usually that is how this is done when you want to fine-tune an LLM. So this is a fully managed service. Actually, all you provide is the JSON line file with question and answer. But at the end of the day, it should always look like question and answer, because whenever you interact with generative AI solution, you kind of ask a question and expect an answer. So what is the specific answer from your use case that you would like it to handle? So this can be done this way. Of course, that is for industry-specific use cases. Now, if you were to fine-tune a model on a different language, for example, that's a much more involved setup where you need to look at your tokenization, what are the tokens you have, prepare all the data in the new language that you have, etc. So that's much more involved. But for industry-specific use cases, that's how you do. So, but I want to answer this as well in a different way. There's different approaches, right? One of them is I fine-tune the LLM to learn about my topic, my domain. This is not the preferred approach. The preferred approach is I allow my LLM to access industry-specific data in two ways. Either it has an agent that can ask the specific data, or I use the RAG pattern that we discussed, where I have already chunked, or let's say my knowledge base is on 500 pages or 1,000,000 pages, whatever that is. I create a knowledge base, and whenever a question comes, I give to the LLM the context by searching that knowledge base. So it's important. So fine-tuning is not very much done today, especially for industry specific. It's easier to feed, either to have an agent that talks to the data or to use the RAG pattern for this. Okay, and GenAI is about the Arabic question. The question is, are there examples of GenAI use in Arabic language processing? Definitely. So Gemini is actually extremely fluent in Arabic. Actually, not just in Arabic, in even many Arabic dialects. I happen to be from Algeria. In Algeria, the dialect is very different from what Saudis, for example, speak, right? Or Moroccan or Tunisian, right? Egyptian dialects. So it's very much capable of understanding those different dialects in written or in spoken form, even. So technically, we don't see a lot of customization that is or fine-tuning required for this. Okay, but you know that in Saudi's DIA, they have proposed a model called Alam, which is Arabic tuned LLM, which is available that can be used. I mentioned as well that in Qatar, they have done Fanar, which is also an Arabic tuned LLM. My recommendation is try Gemini as is today. Its Arabic capabilities is actually pretty surprising and amazing. I've actually worked myself on a POC with a customer. They provided us 64,000 documents in Arabic, and Gemini is perfectly capable of understanding what's the content, answering any question on that text in Arabic, with questions in Arabic, answers in Arabic, text in Arabic. So it's really, Gemini is very fluent in Arabic. But the good thing is you can actually test it in the public version of Gemini, and you will see how good it is in Arabic today. And so many other languages, right? Not just like Urdu, Hindi, all these languages are now becoming common practice. Any other question, maybe, Abdullah? I hope that answered the question.
I hope so as well. So I also got one question, guys, regarding somebody asked that what are the Google Cloud approaches for data privacy and security in generative AI? So I would like to take that particular question. So so while drafting or training a particular model, the best way is not to use the customer's particular data for fine tuning or interferencing, because it can be problemsome. Plus, Vertex AI also supports private LLM deployment with regional isolation and sovereign cloud setups for regulatory compliances as well. Plus, you can use end-to-end encryption by using cloud-native tools such as IAM, VPC, service controls, and Cloud DLP for sensitive data retraction. I hope this particular answer gives you the insight that you were looking for, guys. Are there any other set of questions that you would like to ask me and Sabri are available? I think so, Sabri, we did an awesome job while giving this webinar that everybody is satisfied.
Great,
So
great to hear.
awesome.
But feel free
So
to reach out, and we're happy to help. Thanks for your time,
yeah, so
everyone.
guys, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll try to accommodate you in providing any particular set of informations that is viable for your information. And thank you for joining in, guys. Have a great day. Take care, guys. Bye bye.